The crystalline spires of Station Zenera pierced through the void like frozen lightning, a monument to 3,000 years of galactic cooperation. Within its central chamber, representatives from 47 civilizations gathered beneath a dome that displayed the swirling majesty of the Andromeda Galaxy. This was the Concilium Galaxia, where the fate of countless worlds was decided. Ambassador Thraseyes of the Velcarum adjusted his ceremonial collar of living metal as he addressed the assembly. His species had held the council chair for 2 centuries, and his voice carried the weight of tradition. We gather today to address an unusual petition. A newcomer species requests membership in our ancient concilium. A wave of chittering, humming, and telepathic murmurs rippled through the chamber. Newcomers appeared perhaps once every generation. Most were found wanting. The humans, Thraseyes continued, and the chamber erupted in what could only be described as cosmic laughter. Counselor Zarena of the Myrothai floated forward, her gaseous form shimmering with amusement. The primates who only achieved lightspeed travel 60 standard cycles ago? The ones who still fight amongst themselves over invisible lines on their singular planet. They were discovered by accident, added Representative Kulvex of the Drontari Collective, his 4 eyes blinking in sequence. A mining ship found them shooting primitive rockets at their own moon. For recreation. High Scholar Vayana of the Lumathari, whose people had mastered quantum consciousness before humanity's ancestors learned to make fire, raised one elegant hand. With respect, Chair, we have standards. The humans are charming in their naivety, but they lack the fundamental qualities that define civilized spacefaring peoples. They have no unified government, no post-scarcity economy, and their longest-lasting peace treaty barely spans a human lifetime. Thraseyes nodded slowly. Nevertheless, they have requested an audience. And our charter, written by the founders themselves, states that any species that can reach Zenera Station under their own power has earned the right to be heard. Then let us humor them, Zarena said, her form pulsing with colors that indicated mild entertainment. It will be educational for them to understand their place in the galactic hierarchy. The vote was called. 39 in favor of granting an audience, 8 abstaining, none opposed. It was decided with the casual indifference one might show to an insect requesting permission to attend a symposium. 3 standard days later, a human vessel docked at Zenera. It was ungainly by galactic standards, a patchwork of different technologies jury-rigged together with what the more generous species called innovative spirit, and what others simply called making do. The humans had named it the Dauntless Horizon, which their translation protocols rendered as something like bravely going despite knowing better. The council reconvened, this time with the full ceremonial protocols. The chamber's environmental controls adjusted to accommodate the humans' narrow atmospheric requirements. Ambassador Thraseyes found this vaguely insulting to the other species who had to endure the oxygen-nitrogen mix, but charter was charter. The doors opened with a resonance that had witnessed 3 millennia of petitioners, conquerors, and supplicants. 3 humans entered. They walked upright on 2 legs, which seemed precarious to many observers. They wore simple dark suits, an oddity given that most species either went natural or wore elaborate cultural regalia. Their leader, according to the credentials transmitted ahead, was named Diplomat Ilara Vostran. Flanking her were Tactical Advisor Marcus Kane and Cultural Representative Dr. Yuki Tanaka. Ilara Vostran was neither physically imposing nor technologically augmented. She had dark hair pulled back simply, eyes that appeared brown in the chamber's light, and a face that showed lines around the mouth and eyes, evidence that humans actually aged visibly, a trait most species had genetically eliminated. She walked to the center of the chamber, to the petitioner's circle, and stood perfectly still. Her companions remained 3 paces behind. The silence stretched. It was customary for petitioners to bow, to offer elaborate greetings, to demonstrate their understanding of galactic civilization's superiority. Ilara Vostran did none of these things. She simply stood, hands at her sides, and met the gaze of every council member in turn. Her expression was neutral, pleasant, but utterly unintimidated. Ambassador Thraseyes felt something he hadn't experienced in decades: uncertainty. "You may speak," he said finally, when the silence had grown uncomfortable. Ilara smiled, a peculiar expression that showed her teeth, something many species found aggressive. But her eyes remained calm. "Thank you, Chair Thraseyes, honored counselors," she began, her voice clear and steady. "We are aware of what you think of us. We know you see us as children playing with dangerous toys. We know you've been watching our world for decades, waiting to see if we'll destroy ourselves." She paused, and the entire chamber seemed to hold its collective breath. "We're here to tell you why you're wrong. The chamber remained silent, but it was no longer the indulgent silence of elders waiting for children to finish speaking. Something in Ilara Vostran's tone had shifted the atmosphere. Ambassador Thray's eyes felt his collar tighten reflexively. Before you judge us, Ilara continued, let me tell you what we learned about you. She gestured, and Dr. Tanaka stepped forward, projecting a holographic display into the air. It showed the Concilium's member species, each represented by their homeworlds. 47 civilizations, Ilara said. An impressive achievement of cooperation. 3,000 years of peace. But we did some research during our journey here, and we noticed something fascinating. The hologram zoomed out, showing the galactic arm. Every single species in this council evolved on a Class A paradise world. Temperate zones, abundant resources, stable suns, no extinction-level events for hundreds of millions of years. The Velcarum evolved on a planet with 3 moons that stabilized its rotation perfectly. The Myrothai developed in nebulae so rich with minerals that scarcity was literally unknown to them. The Lumathari achieved consciousness in a binary star system that bathed their world in constant, perfect light. She turned to face the council directly. Not one of you knows what it means to survive on a death world. High Scholar Vayana's luminous form flickered with irritation. This is absurd. Earth is a Class C habitable world. Difficult, perhaps, but hardly a death world. Marcus Kane stepped forward now, his voice carrying the clipped precision of someone accustomed to threat assessment. Class C by your metrics, which define habitability by current conditions. Let me tell you about Earth's history. 5 mass extinction events. A moon so large it destabilizes our axis, causing ice ages every 100,000 years. Tectonic plates that constantly reshape our geography. A magnetic field that periodically reverses, exposing our surface to cosmic radiation. Volcanic eruptions that have blotted out our sun for years at a time. Asteroids that have struck with the force of billions of nuclear weapons. You let that sink in. And that's before we get to the biology. Earth didn't just develop one apex predator, it developed thousands. Our ancestors competed with creatures that could run faster, hit harder, and bite through bone. We survived by being more stubborn than anything else on our planet. Counselor Zarena pulsed with dismissive colors. This explains your violent nature, not why we should embrace it. Does it? Ilara asked quietly. Tell me, Counselor Zarena, when was the last time the Myrothai faced a crisis that threatened your entire species? The gaseous form stilled. We, the Concilium, prevent such crises. That's not an answer, Ilara pressed. The truth is, none of you have faced existential threat in living memory. Your civilizations advanced in comfort. You developed philosophy, art, science, all wonderful things, but you did it from a position of safety. She pulled up another image. This one showed Earth, blue and white and beautiful. Humans developed civilization despite our world trying to kill us. We invented agriculture during an ice age. We built cities on fault lines and coastlines battered by hurricanes. We split the atom while fighting a world war. We reached space while 2 of our largest nations held enough weapons to glass our entire planet, fingers on the trigger for 50 years. Yes, High Scholar Vayana said coldly. You nearly destroyed yourselves. Repeatedly. This is precisely why you're not ready. No, Ilara replied, and her voice carried steel now. This is precisely why you need us. The chamber erupted in discord. Multiple species attempted to speak at once, their various forms of communication creating a cacophony that the translation system struggled to parse. Ambassador Thray's eyes raised his hand, and order slowly returned. Explain yourself, Diplomat Vostran. Ilara nodded respectfully. For 3,000 years you've had peace. Remarkable, admirable peace. But I studied your charter, your histories, your conflicts before the Concilium was formed. Do you know what I found? She didn't wait for an answer. Your wars were philosophical disagreements. Territorial disputes over ideal planets. Cultural misunderstandings. Tragic, yes, but fought by species who fundamentally believed the universe was a place where reason would prevail, where resources were ultimately abundant, where survival was the default assumption. She paused, her brown eyes reflecting the light of the holographic Earth. None of you have ever had to look into the void and understand in your bones that it's trying to kill you. None of you have had to innovate or die. None of you have had to make the terrible choices that survival demands. Marcus Kane spoke again. You've built a beautiful civilization in a safe neighborhood. But the galaxy is bigger than your explored space and it's not all safe. Sooner or later, you'll face something that doesn't care about reason or tradition or 3,000 years of peace. Dr. Tanaka finally spoke, her voice soft but clear. When that day comes, you'll need people who know how to survive. The silence that fell then was profound and unsettling. Ambassador Thray's eyes found his carefully cultivated composure slipping. In 2 centuries of chairing the concilium, he had never encountered petitioners who spoke to the council as equals, or worse, as if the council might need them more than they needed membership. Bold words, he said, keeping his tone measured. But words are all they are. You speak of survival and necessity, but what evidence do you offer that humanity possesses any qualities we lack? Ilera nodded, as if she'd been expecting exactly this question. A fair challenge, Chair. Dr. Tanaka, if you would? The cultural representative stepped forward and modified the holographic display. A star map appeared, showing a region of space unfamiliar to most of the council. 6 months ago, one of our exploration vessels, the Perseus, was charting a system 70 light-years from Earth. They encountered a Lumathari science ship that had suffered a catastrophic failure in their quantum consciousness matrix. High Scholar Vayana's form brightened with surprise. The enlightened path. They never reported back. We assumed they had chosen to transcend to a higher plane of study. No, Dr. Tanaka said gently. They were trapped in a decaying orbit around a neutron star, their crew locked in a feedback loop of their own terror. The Perseus didn't have compatible technology. Our systems are crude by your standards. We still use physical computers separate from our biology. She pulled up a recording. The council watched as the bulky human ship deployed something that looked like magnetic grappling hooks and cables, physically tethering itself to the Lumathari vessel and using its own engines to pull both ships away from the neutron star's gravity well. It took 16 hours, Marcus Kane explained. Our hull was never designed for that kind of stress. 3 sections developed microfractures. 2 of our crew suffered radiation exposure. But we got them out. Once in stable orbit, Dr. Tanaka continued, our engineer, a woman named Raya Chetri, spent 4 days jury-rigging a quantum biological interface using spare parts from our reactor shielding and her own neural implant. She doesn't remember most of it. The doctors said she was working in a state of advanced stimulant toxicity. The hologram showed a makeshift device that would have made any Lumathari engineer weep at its inelegance. But according to the data, it had worked. Engineer Chetri suffered permanent neurological damage from the interface, Ilera said quietly. She can no longer work in space. But all 37 Lumathari crew members survived. High Scholar Vayana floated forward, her luminous body pulsing with complex emotions. We never knew. The enlightened path was listed as lost. Why did you not report this? We tried, Marcus said. Your nearest station refused to acknowledge our transmission. We were told that human vessels were not authorized to contact Lumathari facilities directly, and that we should file an incident report through proper channels. We're still waiting to hear back. A ripple of uncomfortable acknowledgement passed through the council chamber. Bureaucracy was the same in any language. One incident, Councillor Kulvek said, though his tone was less dismissive than before. An admirable rescue, yes, but hardly evidence of indispensable qualities. You're right, Ilera agreed. One incident proves nothing. Dr. Tanaka? The hologram changed again, showing a series of files. Over the past 60 years of human space exploration, we have encountered 7 species that are represented in this council. In that time, we have documented 43 separate incidents where human vessels assisted council ships in distress. The list scrolled through the air. Rescue operations, medical assistance, technical repairs, navigation guidance through stellar anomalies. In one case, a human cargo ship had physically positioned itself between a Velcrum passenger liner and a debris field from an exploded comet, sacrificing its own hull integrity to save the other vessel. In every case, Dr. Tanaka said, we rendered aid without expectation of reciprocity or even acknowledgement. Because that's what you do when someone needs help. Representative Zarena's gaseous form swirled with troubled colors. Why bring this up now? Why not mention these actions in your petition? Because we didn't do it for recognition, Ilera replied. We did it because it was necessary. But since you asked for evidence of what humanity brings to the concilium, there it is. We see problems and we solve them. Inelegantly, sometimes dangerously, often at great personal cost, but we solve them. Ambassador Thray's eyes studied the list of incidents, his analytical mind processing the implications. The humans had been helping council species for decades, operating in the shadows of galactic civilization, unacknowledged and unrewarded. There's something else, Marcus said, and his tone made several council members focus their attention. "These incidents we documented, these are the ones involving council species. But we've encountered others out there. Species you've never cataloged. Situations your charts don't predict." He pulled up an image that sent a collective shock through the chamber. It showed a ship unlike anything in council records, organic, crystalline, and utterly alien in its geometry. "2 years ago," Marcus said quietly, "we found these in an uncharted system. They were hibernating, but our xenobiologists estimated there were thousands of them. Maybe tens of thousands." The silence that fell was no longer skeptical. Was afraid. The crystalline ship rotated slowly in the holographic display, its surfaces catching and refracting light in ways that seemed to defy known physics. To many in the council, it resembled a predator frozen mid-strike. Ambassador Thray's eyes felt his centuries of diplomatic training warring with a primal response he hadn't experienced since childhood. "Where did you encounter this?" "Grid coordinates Gamma 779, Marcus replied. "About 200 light-years beyond your furthest survey beacon. We were mapping potential colony sites. The system appeared dead, 3 planets, all barren, orbiting a dying star. Then our sensors picked up thermal signatures in the asteroid belt." Dr. Tanaka expanded the image, showing dozens of the crystalline vessels anchored to asteroids, their forms dark and dormant. "Our xenobiologist, Dr. Amara Okonkwo, spent 3 months studying them from a distance. She determined they're biomechanical in nature, grown, not built. The asteroids they're attached to have been completely hollowed out, all resources consumed." "Consumed?" High Scholar Vayana repeated, her luminous form dimming. "You mean they're feeders?" "We don't know for certain," Ilara said carefully. "We didn't wake them to find out. But Dr. Okonkwo's analysis suggests they're in a dormant cycle, possibly waiting for specific stellar conditions to trigger reanimation. The star they're orbiting is approximately 8,000 years away from going supernova." Councillor Kulvex's 4 eyes blinked in rapid succession. 8,000 years. Why would any species wait? He stopped, understanding dawning. "They're not waiting. They're traveling. They arrived at that system, consumed what they needed, and entered hibernation until the supernova gives them the energy to move to the next system." "That's our theory," Marcus confirmed. "And if we're right, it means they've been doing this for a very, very long time." The asteroid belt showed signs of previous visitations. "We found crystalline fragments that carbon dated to 3 million years ago." The weight of that timeline settled over the chamber like a shroud. Representative Zarena pulsed with rapid, anxious colors. "Why didn't you report this immediately? Why keep such a discovery secret?" "We did report it," Ilara said, and there was an edge to her voice now. 8 months ago, we transmitted all our findings to the Concilium's scientific directorate. We flagged it as high priority. We requested immediate consultation. Ambassador Thray's eyes accessed the records, his internal systems searching. His collar tightened painfully. The report was filed, marked for review. No action was taken. "Because it came from humans?" Marcus said flatly. "We checked. Reports from established council species get immediate review by senior scientists. Reports from probationary contact species go into a queue. A very long queue." The shame that rippled through the chamber was palpable. The Concilium prided itself on its scientific openness, its commitment to knowledge. But bureaucracy and prejudice had blinded them. "There's more," Dr. Tanaka said softly. "After we filed our report and heard nothing, we continued our survey missions. We've now documented 7 similar sites, all in deep space beyond your borders. Always near dying stars. Always the same crystalline vessels in ever-increasing numbers." The hologram updated, showing a map of the galaxy with red markers indicating the locations. The council members studied the pattern, and several gasped or emitted their species equivalent of distress. "They're in a ring," High Scholar Vayana whispered. "Surrounding our entire explored region of space." "Yes," Ilara confirmed. "And according to our astrophysics team, 6 of the 7 stars will go supernova within the next 3,000 years. The 7th," she highlighted one marker that glowed brighter than the others, "will go critical in approximately 500 years. The silence was absolute. Finally, Councillor Kulvex spoke, his voice unsteady. "You came here not just to petition for membership. You came to warn us." "We came for both," Ilara said. "We believe in what the Concilium represents. Peace, cooperation, the advancement of all species. These are ideals worth preserving. But we also believe the Concilium needs to face reality. She gestured to the red markers surrounding their space. For 3,000 years, you've had the luxury of peace because you've lived in a safe pocket of the galaxy. Your explored space is relatively empty of threats. But the universe is larger and stranger than your borders, and it doesn't care about your philosophy. Marcus stepped forward. The question isn't whether these things will wake up. The question is whether you'll be ready when they do. Ambassador Thray's eyes forced himself to think past his fear. What do you propose? That you stop seeing us as primitive children, Ilara said, meeting his gaze steadily, and start seeing us as the species that knows how to survive what you can't imagine. We don't have your technology or your enlightenment, but we have something you've never needed. She paused, letting the chamber absorb her words. We have experience with monsters. The council chamber descended into chaos. Representatives from 47 species spoke simultaneously, their various forms of communication creating a storm of sound, light, telepathic pulses, and chemical signals that the translation systems could barely process. Ambassador Thray's eyes struck the resonance gong, its deep tone cutting through the discord. Order. We will address this revelation with the dignity befitting this chamber. Slowly, quiet returned. But the atmosphere had fundamentally changed. The humans were no longer petitioners to be humored. They were harbingers of a truth the council didn't want to face. High Scholar Vayana spoke first, her luminous form still dim with shock. Even if we accept your interpretation of these entities, what makes you believe humanity is equipped to address such a threat? You have 60 years of spaceflight. Some of us have been traveling between stars for 15,000 years. Because we've been fighting extinction since before we had language, Marcus replied. Every species here evolved to fit their environment. Humans evolved to change ours. When ice covered our planet, we didn't hibernate, we made fire. When predators hunted us, we made weapons. When disease threatened us, we made medicine. We don't wait for problems to solve themselves. Counselor Kulvex leaned forward, his multiple eyes focusing intently. The Drontari Collective has sophisticated military capabilities, defensive fleets that patrol our borders. What could humans possibly contribute that our technology cannot? Creativity under pressure, Dr. Tanaka answered. Your military operates on established protocols, proven strategies, predictable responses. You excel at defending against known threats. But those vessels we found? They're unknown. And the unknown doesn't fight by rules you can predict. She pulled up another image, this one from Earth's history. It showed a grainy photograph of a primitive aircraft held together with wire and fabric. In 1903, humans achieved powered flight for the first time. By 1969, we had walked on our moon. That's 66 years from barely getting off the ground to leaving our planet entirely. We didn't do it through careful, methodical research alone. We did it through trial, error, failure, and the absolute refusal to accept that something couldn't be done. You call that a strength? Representative Zarena pulsed with incredulous colors. That sounds like recklessness. Chaos. Sometimes they're the same thing, Ilara admitted. But recklessness paired with intelligence becomes innovation. Chaos paired with purpose becomes adaptation. Yes, we've made terrible mistakes. We've failed spectacularly. But we've also survived things that should have killed us, and we've learned from every failure. A new voice entered the debate. Counselor Threnix of the Aetherni, who had been silent until now, spoke with the harmonic tones of his crystalline physiology. I find myself troubled by this entire exchange. Diplomat Vostrin, you present us with fear, these dormant vessels, and then offer humanity as the solution. This is a classic negotiation tactic. Create a problem, provide the cure. You think we fabricated this? Marcus asked, his voice dangerous. I think the timing is convenient, Threnix replied calmly. You petition for membership and simultaneously reveal a threat only you have discovered, which only you claim to understand. Ilara took a slow breath. If we wanted to manipulate you, Counselor, we would have lied. We would have hidden our flaws and presented ourselves as the peaceful, enlightened species you wanted us to be. Instead, we told you the truth. We're violent, stubborn, and barely held together. We came here because we believe the concilium is worth preserving, and because we know you can't preserve it alone. The evidence is verifiable, Dr. Tanaka added. We've provided complete coordinates, sensor logs, and analysis. Send your own ships. Study those sites yourselves. We welcome scrutiny. Ambassador Thray's eyes had been processing data streams throughout the debate, his enhanced neural systems analyzing every aspect of the human's presentation. I have reviewed your sensor logs. They appear authentic. I have also cross-referenced your incident reports, the 43 assistance operations you mentioned. All verified through our own ship logs, which were simply never compiled into a coherent pattern. He paused, his collar shifting colors to indicate deep contemplation. What troubles me most is not whether you're telling the truth. What troubles me is that you might be right about us. The chamber stilled. The chair of the concilium rarely spoke with such candor. For 3,000 years, Thrasias continued, we have congratulated ourselves on our enlightenment. We've built a civilization based on reason, on the belief that intelligence and cooperation can overcome any challenge. But perhaps we've been fortunate rather than wise. Perhaps we've built our peace in a calm sea, never testing whether our ship can weather a storm. High Scholar Vayana pulsed with complex, troubled colors. You're suggesting we admit weakness. That we acknowledge needing these newcomers. I'm suggesting, Thrasias said carefully, that we consider whether wisdom includes recognizing what we lack. Elara seized the moment. We're not asking you to need us. We're asking you to partner with us. Your knowledge, our adaptability. Your technology, our creativity. Your philosophy, our pragmatism. She looked around the chamber, meeting as many eyes and sensory organs as she could. Together, we might actually be ready for what's coming. Ambassador Thrasias let the weight of Elara's words settle over the chamber. 3,000 years of tradition pressed against the reality of an uncertain future. Finally he spoke. The concilium was founded on principles of careful deliberation. We do not make hasty decisions, especially regarding membership. However, these are exceptional circumstances. He paused, and Elara sensed the shift in his tone. Therefore, I propose a test. Marcus tensed beside her. Tests from advanced civilizations rarely favored the primitive newcomers. The dormant vessels you discovered, the closest site will experience stellar activation in 500 years, you said. But stellar activity is not perfectly predictable. What if we could trigger a smaller-scale awakening? A controlled experiment to study these entities under monitored conditions. Several council members reacted with alarm, but Thrasias continued. We would select one of the distant sites, establish a perimeter with our most advanced monitoring stations, and use stellar manipulation technology to simulate the conditions that would naturally awaken them. A single vessel, carefully contained. You want to poke the sleeping predator, Marcus said flatly. To see what happens. We want to know what we're facing, Thrasias corrected. If these entities are as dangerous as you suggest, we need to understand them. And if humanity truly possesses the qualities you claim, adaptability, innovation under pressure, then you should be present for this research. High Scholar Vayana pulsed with approval. A joint operation. Council science teams to handle the technical aspects, human observers to provide their unique perspective. If you're correct about needing each other, this will prove it. Elara met Marcus's eyes, then Dr. Tanaka's. A silent conversation passed between them. This was dangerous, potentially catastrophic. It was also exactly the kind of challenge that might force the Council to see humanity as equals. We accept, Elara said. On one condition, humans aren't just observers. We're full partners in the operation. Our scientists, our engineers, our strategic input given equal weight to yours. Presumptuous, Councillor Kulvex muttered, but there was a hint of respect in his tone. Necessary, Elara countered. If this goes wrong, we need to be able to act immediately, not file requests through your chain of command. Thrasias considered this. Agreed. But understand, this is your test as much as it is an examination of the threat. If humanity proves capable, it will strengthen your petition considerably. If you prove to be a liability, then you'll have your answer about us, Marcus finished. Fair enough. The vote was called. This time the result was different. 31 in favor, 12 opposed for abstaining. Not unanimous but substantial. 6 weeks later, the joint fleet assembled at grid coordinates Gamma 782, one of the more distant dormant sites. The operation involved 4 council vessels, representing Lumathari, Velcarum, Drontari, and Myrothai capabilities, and 2 human ships. The Perseus, whose crew had experience with improvisation, and a new vessel, the Resilience, equipped with humanity's latest adaptive systems. Elara floated in the Perseus's observation deck, watching through the viewport as the fleet established position around a cluster of asteroids. Anchored to the largest rock was one of the crystalline vessels, dark and dormant, beautiful in its terrible symmetry. Preliminary scans confirm your data, came High Scholar Vayana's voice over the comm. The entity shows no energy signature, no thermal output. Completely inert. Stellar manipulation array is in position, reported the Velcarum commander. We're ready to begin gradual energy increase. This will simulate approximately 500 years of stellar evolution, compressed into a 72-hour period. Marcus joined Alara at the viewport. This is insane. You know that, right? Completely, she agreed. But it's also brilliant. If it works, we learn what we're up against with time to prepare. If it goes wrong? If it goes wrong, we improvise. He smiled grimly. Just like always. The stellar manipulation began. Massive energy projectors, technology far beyond human capability, began bombarding the dying star with precisely calibrated radiation. The star's output increased incrementally, its light shifting through the spectrum. Hour by hour the team watched. The crystalline vessel remained dark. Then, 47 hours into the experiment, Dr. Amara Okonkwo's voice crackled over the human channel. Perseus to fleet. We're detecting microfractures in the entity's surface. Whatever's inside is beginning to respond. Confirmed, Vayana said. Internal temperature rising. Biochemical reactions initiating. It's working. 12 hours later, the vessel began to glow from within, a cold light that seemed to devour rather than emit illumination. The asteroids around it started to show signs of decay, their surfaces crumbling into dust that drifted toward the crystalline form. It's feeding, Dr. Tanaka breathed. Even before full activation, it's consuming matter. The Drontari military commander's voice was tense. Energy output increasing exponentially. Weapons systems standing by. Hold fire, Thrazi's ordered. We need data. Then the crystalline vessel opened what might have been eyes, or sensors, or something else entirely. A dozen points of light appeared on its surface, and they turned, with terrible purpose, toward the fleet. Contact, Marcus said quietly. We have contact. The moment the crystalline vessel's lights focused on the fleet, every alarm in every ship began screaming. The entity, fully awakened now, detached from its asteroid in a single fluid motion that defied the physics of its massive size. All ships, evasive pattern Theta, the Drontari commander ordered, his training taking over. The Council vessels began their programmed retreat, executing maneuvers perfected over centuries of simulation. The entity moved faster. It's accelerating without visible propulsion, High Scholar Vayana reported, her voice strained. Impossible velocities. Closing on the Drontari vessel. Impact in 17 seconds. Defensive shields to maximum, the Drontari commander called out. His ship's energy barriers flared to life, a technology that could withstand the output of a small star. The entity passed through them like they weren't there. Shields ineffective. Panic edged into the commander's voice. Hull contact in 3. Perseus to fleet, Marcus cut in. Don't run. Shut everything down. All power, all emissions. Now. That's insane, the Drontari commander shot back. We'll be defenseless. You're already defenseless, Ilara interrupted. It's tracking your energy signatures. Give it nothing to see. For a heartbeat, the channel was silent. Then Ambassador Thrazi's voice, calm despite the circumstances. All ships, emergency shutdown. Now. The Council vessels went dark, their sophisticated systems powering down in cascading sequences. The human ships had already gone silent. They designed their systems to shut down quickly, a paranoia born from too many hostile encounters. The crystalline entity, less than a kilometer from the Drontari ship, suddenly stopped. Its lights swept across the darkened fleet, searching. The only illumination came from the dying star they'd artificially stimulated. It's confused, Dr. Okonkwo whispered over the Perseus's internal comm. Without energy signatures to track, it can't distinguish ships from debris. They drifted in silence for 7 minutes that felt like hours. The entity circled the fleet twice, its lights playing over hulls, searching for prey that had suddenly vanished. Then, with the same terrible fluidity, it turned back toward the asteroid field. It's returning to dormancy, Dr. Tanaka whispered. Without sufficient energy sources, it's going back to sleep. They watched as the entity reattached itself to an asteroid and began to darken. Within minutes, it had returned to its inert state, indistinguishable from the rock around it. All ships, gradual power restoration, Thrazi's ordered. Minimum emissions only. As the fleet slowly came back to life, the magnitude of what had just happened settled over everyone. The Council's most advanced defensive technology had been useless. Their centuries of military doctrine had nearly gotten them killed. A human's counterintuitive order had saved them. The journey back to Station Zenera took 3 days. 3 days of analysis, debate, and for many council members, deep introspection. The recordings were reviewed hundreds of times. The entity had moved through shields designed to withstand stellar radiation. It had demonstrated intelligence, hunting behavior, and adaptability that exceeded anything in Council records. When the fleet docked and the joint crew disembarked, the entire Council was waiting in the chamber. The session was called to order immediately. Ambassador Thrazai stood, his collar now bearing new markings, symbols of a leader who had faced the unknown and survived. We have reviewed all data from the expedition. The entity demonstrated capabilities that render our current defensive strategies obsolete. Had humanity not been present, we would have lost at least one vessel and her entire crew. He turned to face Elara, Marcus, and Dr. Tanaka. More significantly, when facing the unknown, human instinct proved superior to our calculated protocols. Commander Marcus Kane recognized the entity's tracking mechanism within seconds. Our own analysis teams required 17 minutes to reach the same conclusion, time we did not have. High Scholar Vayana floated forward, her luminous form now bright with conviction. I was wrong. We were wrong. For 3,000 years, we have equated peace with preparedness, wisdom with safety. We built our civilization in calm waters and called ourselves master sailors. She gestured toward the humans. These people built their civilization in a storm. Every generation of their species has faced existential threats. They don't have our technology because they've spent their resources on survival. They don't have our unity because they've had to compete for everything. But they have something we've never needed and now desperately require. They know how to face the impossible and find a way through. Counselor Kulvex spoke next, his 4 eyes focused intently on the humans. The Drontari Collective has defended Council space for 800 years. Our military doctrine is studied across 47 worlds. And in 17 seconds it was rendered meaningless. I recommend immediate integration of human strategic thinking into our defense networks. Representative Zarena pulsed with colors that indicated profound respect. The Myrothai have always valued adaptability. It is how we survive as a gaseous species in a solid universe. Humanity embodies adaptability at a level we have never witnessed. They should not be petitioners. They should be partners. One by one, Council members spoke. Some with enthusiasm, some with reluctance, but all with a new understanding. The vote, when it came, was not whether to grant humanity membership. It was whether to grant them a seat on the High Council itself, a position of leadership usually reserved for species with millennia of spacefaring history. The vote was called. 42 in favor. 3 opposed. 2 abstaining. Ambassador Thrazai's approached Elara, extending his hand in the human gesture of greeting he had studied. Ambassador Vostrin, on behalf of the Concilium Galaxia, I welcome humanity not as junior members but as equals. Your species brings something irreplaceable to our civilization, the knowledge that survival is not guaranteed and the will to fight for it anyway. Elara took his hand, her grip firm. We accept, with the understanding that we have as much to learn from you as you have from us. Your peace, your cooperation, your commitment to knowledge, these are achievements humanity aspires to. Together, maybe we can build something stronger than either of us could alone. Marcus stepped forward. And those things sleeping in the dark? When they wake up, and they will wake up, we'll be ready. All of us. Dr. Tanaka added quietly, the universe is vast and full of wonders. But it's also full of challenges. Humanity learned long ago that the only way to face them is together. The chamber, which had been silent when the humans first spoke, erupted in sounds of approval, chittering, humming, telepathic warmth, and chemical signals of acceptance. The silence had been broken not by dominance or superiority, but by truth. As the celebration continued, Elara looked out through the chamber's dome at the stars beyond. Somewhere out there, thousands of those crystalline entities waited in the dark. The threat was real and it was coming. But now, for the first time, the galaxy would face it united, with the wisdom of the ancient species and the stubborn, creative, relentless spirit of humanity. The Concilium had stood for 3,000 years in peace. Now it would learn to stand in defiance. And the universe, vast and uncaring as it was, would learn that when humans spoke, even the stars listened.